Okay, so thanks so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm going to try to keep this super fun and interactive and casual. It's kind of how I go, even though I don't dress the part. I really want to talk about the evolving workplace today, not so much in the sense of, physical workspaces. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I want to talk about the barriers to connecting them and why we'd want to connect them, and the cultural impact of connecting them as well, because I think that's left out of a lot of discussion. So before I do any of that, I always like to start with the why, okay? Because really, in order for any organization or person to succeed, they really do have to continue to learn. And the why is really built around building a portfolio of product and technology that promotes that learning in an organization. This Christopher Myers, who's a professor at Harvard Business School, wrote an article that I picked up on Twitter about 30 days ago. And it really jumped off the page to me because I had been giving these presentations and I've been talking to customers and I've been trying to solve these problems. And this says it best. So, is your company really encouraging employees to share what they know? Are they really? What's the cultural impact of that? Well, he's saying that he estimates the Fortune 500 are still losing a combined $31.5 billion in people's inability to share or their lack of wanting to share knowledge across the enterprise. So let's just think about that for a second. That's a lot of money. That's the why right there. Now, I'm a seller, but that really jumps off the page. But this learning really is ad hoc. In order to get effective learning across an enterprise, we have to go into the field. A lot of knowledge is gained in a conference room, but the fact of the matter is, CEOs, principals of organizations need to get out into the field and need to talk to the factory worker. They need to understand what the realities of the competitive landscape is. They need to pursue blue oceans through real data that they extract. So here you see an example of, a principal meeting a factory worker. You see discussion going on at a construction site. The knowledge transfer that occurs here is worth billions of dollars to organizations. It can help keep pace with competitors. In fact, even outpace competitors because they're quick to move, right? Now, you could even make sorry about the poor resolution image here. I need some training on that. I'm sure somebody here could help me, but you could even make an argument that traditional meeting rooms stifle sharing and learning. I've been in really elegant, well-built, gorgeous conference room tables with a lot of VPs around the table. And I have to tell you that depending upon the political landscape, it doesn't exactly promote, hey, I think that's a bad idea, right? I mean, it just doesn't. So we don't get the real tangible data. Important for sure, but connecting that boardroom to the field is incredibly important. So there is this paradigm shift that's really enabling a new workspace, and I think we're all aware of it. Wi-Fi is everywhere. It's here in this room. And with that, we have a new breed of mobile worker. It used to be, now I don't want to date myself, but when someone was working from home, first of all, it had a negative connotation. That's a cultural thing. That's number one. Number two, in order for them to be part of the fold, we actually had to extend network out to the home. There was a router out there, there was a telephone, there was maybe a video system if you were lucky or powerful enough. But the reality is that was a remote worker. Those days are over. Now we have mobile workers that are in a Starbucks. I know I do 5 meetings a week at a Starbucks. It's my favorite office, right? I'm bouncing all over the country. I'm going to sit in a Starbucks. But also, mobility in terms of what I can do from my smartphone now puts my office wherever I am, right? And it has really changed in the dynamics of how do I invite somebody into a meeting when I have no idea where they are or what technology they have? Huge challenge. Now, don't laugh. You can laugh a little, but I was in Chicago over the summer, forgot about a meeting I had with a client, got a reminder from Raul, who's in the upper right-hand side. He runs training for Acano globally. And I jumped on my client that was on my smartphone on an LTE network and literally conducted this meeting from the back of an Uber. So the long and short of it is, work is what you do, it is not where you are. And if we look at the next gen worker, that's crucial, okay? Now, having said that, it's not just about mobility. When I talk to customers today, there are telepresence rooms, there are huddle rooms. They're driving the technology deeper and deeper into the workspaces of the employees. And the reason why they're doing that is that first slide, $31.5 billion, right? They want employees to learn and share. So they keep driving the technology further and further down. What that means is we have a greater need to connect seamlessly a huddle room to a conference room or a mobile worker to a telepresence system. Does that make sense? Okay. But the quality of experience really does matter. And I will tell you, if I'm participating in an earnings call to analysts, I'm probably not going to do that in the back of an Uber, right? What is the audio? What is the landscape? Where am I calling from? What is the purpose of the meeting? If I have an important meeting with my boss, I'm not going to join via my cell phone. I'm going to wait for a quiet area. I want to make sure that my environment is controlled. You know, we kind of grew up with this a little bit, didn't we? Because when cell phones really started to go crazy and I started to participate on audio conferences from the road, if it was a really important call early on, what did you do? You went home or you went to the office because you wanted to maintain a really good connection. So we've been programmed to understand this, but I see people pushing the limits of technology every day. Just a reminder, as we do this, as we cross into this next phase, a little bit of training goes a long way, right? Mute that mic. Don't be a distraction to that call. So there is trade-offs to this. Oops. Okay, so now we know that we want to connect these different workspaces. We know it's incredibly important. We want to have video collaboration. We want to understand when people are suffering pain, why that pain exists, when something good happened or bad happened. But we're not doing it today, and we're not doing it because there's a whole bunch of barriers in the way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how you might be able to solve for it. If you're a collaboration user today, think about what you have to process before you send that meeting invite out, and what a hassle it is. First thing is, who do I want in the meeting, and why do I want them there? Number two, what technology do they have? What bandwidth do they have? Do they have access to the application that I want to use? Do I have to share data? Is this an audio conference or a video conference? Is this, a web conference, or, can I reach them via chat? That's madness. And there's no way that, if you have to process all of that you're going to have a successful meeting go off ad hoc. It's impossible. And it's a nightmare for IT to coordinate, right? So if we think about why it's a hassle, you have to think about the pillars that all of this technology is really built upon. At the ground level, we have call control, and we have different stacks for audio, video, and web collaboration. But not only do we have different call controller stacks, and maybe it's cloud, maybe it's on-prem, depending upon the size of the company. Sometimes it's a mix, which adds additional complexity. But we also have different workflows for each. So the workflow for audio conferencing has been there forever. It's an 800 number, and I put my PIN in, and I can invite whoever I want. I just construct an email, I send it out, everybody joins. As soon as video is part of that, like now it's getting a lot more complex, right? Now I have to say, okay, let me call somebody from IT to figure out what bridge can support both audio and video. And by the way, it's a different number, so now I have to send another email or invite out, right? And all the way down the line. In order to really successfully deploy a multi-environment type situation where one workflow can carry all, you really do need to implement sound infrastructure. I'm not talking about Acano today. You can use Acano, you can use 10 other providers, but having software that can act as middleware that will allow any endpoint or any phone to call any other endpoint or phone, leveraging all of the call control protocols is the answer to this problem. So now, with a single invite, I don't care what people are coming in on, because there's a method for everyone, regardless of the technology they're using, regardless whether they're on my network or off in the field, okay? Here's a wonderful example of that. Just because a Cisco endpoint can talk to a Polycom, or more specifically a Link or a Skype for Business participant can join in and talk to someone who's on a Cisco phone, doesn't mean that you're going to have success. The workflow really does matter. How do I invite? And who does that invite go to? You could argue, and I want to choose my words carefully here, Microsoft and Skype for Business and Link is really taking over the enterprise in terms of mass adoption. They're not the only ones, but let's face it, I go into a large enterprise, a whole bunch of them are going the Skype for Business route. Now, I will tell you, it is not because it's the greatest video quality you've ever seen in your life. Definitely not. And it's certainly not the greatest audio quality. And they're still figuring some things out there. The reason why it's so popular is it lives within the documents and the systems that people are already using. It's easy. They hit the create meeting button, they invite who they're going to invite, and it goes out. Here's an example of a hot link that anybody who is on Link or Skype for Business, sorry for the legacy slide, can simply click it, put in their Link conference ID, and join the meeting. But if you see here, there's a big, giant non-Link participant. So anybody who doesn't have access to that technology on a mobile device, on another video device, outside the corporate network, have instruction on how to join the call. And the proper infrastructure brings everybody together in a reliable manner and identifies them by name. So workflow is super important, and we've been around for 3 years. We've been solving these compatibility challenges for that time. And it is inevitable that every single presentation I go into, the subsequent meeting is a whiteboard session, and all we talk about is workflow. Because there may be 4 or 5 different workflows that occur in the enterprise, and everybody's trying to collapse that down to 2 if they can. 1 would be bliss, right? So we hear a lot about cloud. The first thing I hear in every single meeting I go to is, we're going cloud. Okay, it's fine. We can go cloud, no problem. We're on-prem, we're cloud. What I see today, though, because the workflow is so incredibly important to the end user, sometimes doing everything in the cloud is a barrier or disruption to that workflow. Because in order to get native integration into my scheduling tools, I kind of have to SIP trunk. I have to live within the enterprise. I have to live on-prem. But I don't have the IT staff. I don't have the resources. I don't have the bandwidth to do everything on-prem. So what I see time and time again, and this is becoming huge, is this hybrid approach where there's an on-prem node that sits on your network that has the same software load in the cloud. So it becomes a private hybrid-based instance. Stay tuned on that. We have companies like Century doing that today, and technology like Acano that can live in both environments and flow both ways. But there's going to be a whole bunch of announcements from Cisco Systems, which, by the way, we just sold last month. You may not be aware. I'm going back. But hybrid cloud is really gaining a lot of momentum. If you think about cloud in general, what a wonderful, great tool, but it's a per-user model. And that's fine if you have 500 employees, but if you have 125,000 employees, I will tell you, the math starts to not work, right? So in that sense, hybrid can kind of give us the best of both worlds. So when we go out today and you want to learn more about how do you solve the challenges of connecting these workspaces, there's technology out there that can do it. You have to do some research. It's difficult. I mean, you can't read a brochure, go to a website without someone claiming that they have Skype for Business interop. Everybody says they do it. The devil really is in the details and who supports that workflow, right? And how do you really make that occur? But you want to solve your challenges of today, but I highly recommend you look to a platform that will solve for futures that you're really not aware of. And I'll give you an example. WebRTC has been around for some time, the ability to click and join a video meeting just from a browser, a Chrome browser, or what have you. Well, Microsoft has been slow to adopt that. They just did adopt it, and guess what? It's not WebRTC, it's ORTC. It's kind of a proprietary version of WebRTC. Now, how are you supposed to know that everybody now who's on a Exchange browser is going to be ORTC? And did the infrastructure that you buy support ORTC? So having a software-based platform where you can add that in and solve for future challenges in addition to existing is really important. A few words about culture. When I joined Cisco the first time, I'd been with Tandberg for almost 10 years. And I went into the Cisco environment, and Tandberg was a video-first culture. Like, we didn't even have phones. You know, everything was video, video, video. Everybody had their own VMRs, worked really effectively. So now all of a sudden, we go into the Cisco environment, and it became a world of WebEx. I mean, 12 WebEx invitations a day. Everything was audio dial back, see the presentation, audio conference, right? And it's not a bad thing. It's just that was their culture. Right? Yeah, 80,000 people or whatever it is. And something funny happened. Because we were video people, we jump on the WebEx and we see this share video little icon, right? So we just share video. So now all of a sudden we're showing video, and the people who would present, well, they'd start to show video because they're like, well, they can't have some people on video and not the presenter, right? So now they're on video, I'm on video, or the team is on video, right? And maybe there's 1,000 people on the call. Something really interesting happened. Politically, people who were on audio noticed that they weren't being heard, that the presenters were really talking to those who they could see. And so slowly, everybody started turning the video on. And I saw a culture transform, I mean, in a matter of 6 months, to be a culture like Tandberg's where you had to be on video, because your idea had to be heard. Now, Cisco has a pretty good culture of learning, right? But culture is everything. Culture is absolutely everything. Just because you build it doesn't mean they come. So today, there really is unlimited access to data. And through my smartphone, I find the answer to a question in 5 seconds. It's almost taken the fun out of trivia, in a way. Like, everybody knows everything, right? And they're kind of right. But, you know, there's also a good degree of uncertainty for the next-gen worker. And if you really think about it, today, the next-gen worker is facing things that their parents or their grandparents didn't have to face. I mean, the reality is, it used to be you went to school, you studied hard, you got a good degree, you got a good job, you stayed there 30 years, you retired, and that was it. Those days are dead. Dead and buried. The fact is, today, the next-gen worker really needs to be a producer versus a consumer. They need to create value every day versus just performing a task. And they need to create a personal brand. This is the reality of what we're facing today in the corporate environment. So all of this really does require us to gain knowledge real time, architect solutions, and provide leadership through change. Connecting new and legacy workspaces really helps enable this. And that's the why. Thank you very much, everybody.